shloke Bhakti Vaibhava Naishtaki Om Agyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukham karoti vachanam pangam langyate giri yat kripadamaham vande Shri Guru Dina Karanam Parmanandam Madhavam. We're resuming our discussion from 413.3. Manya Mahabhagavatam Naradam Devadarshanam Yena Prokta Kriya Yoga Paricharya Vidhi Hari. Vidur continued, I know that the great sage Narad is the greatest of all devotees. He has compiled the Panchalatrika procedure of devotional service and has directly met the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Vidur was curious as to why did Narad Muni glorify Dhruva in the yajna that was performed by the Prachetas. So by glorifying Narad Muni, Vidur is explaining why his interest in this particular pastime is. Because when somebody of the stature of Narad Muni is glorifying another devotee, then that interaction is definitely worthy of further interest. So in the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he comments on the Panchalatrika procedure, and since we follow the Vaishnava Dharma, then it's also important for us to understand what does Panchalatrika mean. So Prabhupada says that there are two different ways of approaching the Supreme Lord. One is called the Bhagavat Marg, or the way of the Srimad Bhagavatam, and the other is called the Panchalatrika Vidhi. Panchalatrika Vidhi is the method of temple worship, and Bhagavat Vidhi is the system of the 9 processes which begin with hearing chanting. The Krishna conscious movement accepts both processes simultaneously and thus enables one to make steady progress on the path of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Panchalatrika procedure was first introduced by the great sage Narad, as referred to here by Vidura. So Srila Prabhupada succinctly here, he is describing Vaishnavism. And historically, if we look at the two margas, the Bhagavad Vidhi and the Panchalatrika Vidhi, were at one point different. They were almost parallel paths. So the Bhagavad Vidhi, it propounds the spontaneous loving devotion. In the Bhagavad Vidhi, the preceptors are the alvars. And if you look at the compilations of alvars, it is full of rag, very, very esoteric, high, spontaneous devotion. Bhagavad Vidhi, to some extent, is found in Brajdham also. In temples over there, the worship of Radha Krishna is in a very informal way. It is mostly driven by spontaneous emotions that the devotees will feed the Lord when they think that the Lord is hungry, they may chastise the Lord. They get this sense that the Lord wants to eat rasgulla, or they get this feeling that the Lord would like to go for a walk. So they treat the deity as a part of their family, and they have very, very intimate dealings with the deities. The Panchalatrika Vidhi is regulated temple worship, where the worship is according to very, very strict rules and regulations. Deities get up at 4:30, Mangala Aarti, offering, dressing, then Aarti at a certain predetermined points. The offering is also regulated. So it is more for those who are practicing devotee. So somewhere around and this time now I'm talking from a historical perspective, that somewhere around the time of Ramanujacharya, they started blending these two paths together, the Bhagavad Vidhi and the Panchalatrika Vidhi. And by the conjunction of these two, Vaishnavism came. So historically, Vaishnavism is not considered to be very old. It came in, it gradually developed. So if you look at if you look at the worship in Sri Rangam, that was mostly by Ramanujacharya, it is mostly Panchalatrika Vidhi, but yet you will see this dancing in front of the deities, singing. You will see the traces of Bhagavad. Similarly, if you go to Udupi, the worship is mostly Panchalatrika. Very, very strict rules and regulations, but yet there are deity pastimes, there are incidents of personal interaction with the deity. The deity is facing the window, so they have these spontaneity also blended into it. So when Vaishnavism came, then they basically combined the best of the two. That for the sadhakas, there was the strong recommendation of following rules and regulations as given by the Panchalatrika system. But because of the influence of the later influence, when Vaishnavism actually became very, very prominent, when Mahaprabhu came, then the spontaneity manifested in the chanting of the holy name, dancing in front of the deities, the Shravana Kirtan aspect of it. So that is why earlier on, Vaishnavism actually did not have a very good name, because it did not really follow both. The deity worship is Panchalatrika. The devotees' conduct is partially Panchalatrika and partially Bhagavad Mark. But factually speaking, it is actually combining the best of the two. Srila Prabhupada, in various purports, he talks about the Panchalatrika Vidhi. So in first canto, 3rd chapter, verse 8, where the incarnations of the Lord are being counted, where Narad is mentioned, and there it is mentioned that he compiled the Panchalatrika Vidhi, and Prabhupada writes that he collected expositions of the Vedas. So the word expositions is important, and we'll see why Prabhupada said that. Exposition essentially means to synthesize something, that you take something from different parts and then you synthesize it and come up with a summation or a description. So that's what Prabhupada says, expositions. So, or the translation is exposition. Prabhupada says the Narad Panchalatrika trains the karmis or the fruitive workers to achieve liberation from fruitive work. So generally the Panchalatrika Vidhi is deployed in the worship of Lakshmi Narayan because it sits well with their mood. They have the mood of opulence. Those who approach Lakshmi Narayan have the mood of Dasya. So the worship is very much in Aishwarya Bhav, and that mood lends itself well to rules and regulations. When Krishna is worshipped, he is worshipped by Bhagavad Vidhi because he does not hide behind his opulence. He, in fact, suppresses his opulence and he is looking for the spontaneity. So Prabhupada then explains, actually, neophyte devotees worship the Lord according to the Panchalatrika Vidhi or regulative principles enjoined in the Narad Pancharatra. Radha Krishna cannot be approached by the neophyte devotees. Therefore, temple worship, according to regulative worship, principles is offered to Lakshmi Narayan. Right? So this is an important point he's making, that even though we have Radha Krishna temples, they are worshipped in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan. Because outside the six Goswamis, there are other temples in Vrindavan where you will see the mood of worship is more informal, more the mood of Radha Krishna worship. But the six Goswamis and following that parampara, ISKCON, they worship Radha Krishna in the mood of Lakshmi Narayan. Prabhupada says that although there may be a Radha Krishna Vigraha, the worship of the neophyte devotee is acceptable as Lakshmi Narayan worship. Worship according to the Panchalatrika Vidhi is called Vidhi Marg, and worship according to the Bhagavad Vidhi is called the Raga Marg. The principles of Raga Marg are specially meant for devotees who are elevated to the Vrindavan platform. The inhabitants of Vrindavan, the gopis, Mother Yashoda, Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd boys, the cows, and everyone else are actually on the Raga Marg or Bhagavad Marg. So essentially the process in ISKCON, the process in Gaudiya Sampradaya is to follow the process of both Pancharatrika and Bhagavad simultaneously. Pancharatrika is followed in deity worship, Pancharatrika is followed in Sadachar, Bhagavad Vidhi is followed in chanting, Sankirtan, singing, dancing. So it synthesizes both of them. Wanted to speak a little bit about, so we know the Pancharatrika came from Narad Muni. So when it is said exposition, so Narad Muni did not invent anything new. He essentially, he combined the relevant portions of the Vedas that deal with deity worship in the Pancharatrika. So as we know that the Vedas are divided into four sections: the Samhitas, Brahmanas, the Aranyakas, and the Upanishads. And there's correspondence between the four. So the Brahmana, this has the prose containing the rules to follow, which enjoin when to do a ritual, how to perform the sacrifice, the chanting of the mantras. It explains the meaning of the mantras, the origin of the mantras. So it's from a more learning the procedure perspective. The brahmanas are meant for the brahmacharis. So they learn the process. Then the samhitas is meant for the grahasthas. And this is essentially an anthology or a collection of hymns and prayers. So essentially what the Pancharatrika does is that it combines the relevant portion of the samhitas, the brahmanas, in some cases the aranyakas and the upanishads, into a contiguous composition with the focus on worship. So it extracts the relevant portion. So when it is said that Narad is the author of the Pancharatra, it means that he is the one who collected it and presented it. And the focus of the Pancharatrika is Devi Varnashram. So it's not that because he picks it up from the samhitas, which are mostly Karmakand, but they are picked up in a way selectively that the focus is not on Karma Varnashram, but Daiva Varnashram based on Yukta Vairagya. So the Vedic scholars, they describe the Pancharatrikas as being a descendant of, and then we can look at it briefly, it's a little involved topic, that there are compositions in the Vedas that are known as tantras. And tantra essentially, it means tanoti rayati. Tanoti rayati means the liberation of energy or the liberation of consciousness from gross form. And so tantras is a way to expand the mind. And there are essentially two categories of the tantras. One is called agama and the second is called nigama. So the agama is essentially a collection of tantric literature which has come down the disciplic succession. And within the agama, there is the Pancharatrikas. So the Pancharatrikas actually are three categories. They're Vaishnava, they're also Shakta, and also Lord Shaiva. So Narad Muni is considered to be the author of the Vaishnava Pancharatrika. So it is also mentioned that the Pancharatrika were given by Narnarayan Rishi. So the name Pancharatrika means that after meditating for 5 days and 5 nights on the best process they collected from all the Vedas, and then they spoke the Pancharatrika to Narad Muni, and Narad Muni wrote that. So that's how the Pancha comes, Pancharatrika, that they meditated for 5 days, 5 nights. Another explanation also is that the Pancha refers to the 5 processes that are practiced by Vaishnavas. And these are the Abhigaman, Upadan, Ijya, Swadhyaya, and Yoga. So Abhigaman points to activities that you do during the normal course. Like, what do you do when you get up in the morning? How do you take a bath? how do you evacuate, how do you conduct yourself in your day-to-day affairs. So that is Abhigaman. Then Upadan is collecting or uh, uh, cleaning and collecting materials for deity worship. Then Ijya is actual deity worship. Swadhyaya is study of the scriptures. And yoga is chanting of the holy name or different kinds of meditation. So essentially, from a more scholarly perspective, from the tantras, a part of the tantras is the agamas, and a part of the agamas is the Panchalatrika, and a part of the Panchalatrika is the Vaishnava Panchalatrika, which is what, as Vaishnavas, we follow. Okay. Yeah. So this comes actually quite a few times, not quite a few times, but comes at least half a dozen times. So I thought I'll take this opportunity to explain. Next time when it comes, then we know what is. Later on, also in the fourth canto, the Panchalatrika will appear again. Srila Prabhupada has a descriptive purport at that point also. But now we know, and we kind of have it in our mind, because what we do is based on Panchalatrika. So then we are also philosophically anchored into what we practice, and also how it combines with the Bhagavad Vidhi to generate what is considered to be Vaishnavism. Okay, moving on to verse 4. Swadharma Shila Purushe Bhagavan Yagya Purusha Ijjimano Bhaktimata Naradendriya Kila. While all the Prachetas were executing religious rituals and sacrificial ceremonies, and thus worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead for his satisfaction, the great sage Narad described the transcendental qualities of Dhruv Maharaj. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport once again describes how Narad Muni compiled the Narad Pancharatra so that one can execute bhakti as per their own varna and ashram. Narad Muni is always glorifying the pastimes of the Lord. In this verse, we see that not only does he glorify the Lord, but he also likes to glorify the devotees of the Lord. The great sage Narad's mission is to broadcast the devotional service of the Lord. For this purpose, he has compiled the Narad Pancharatra, a directory of devotional service, so that devotees can take information about how to execute devotional service and thus engage 24 hours a day in performing sacrifice for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has created 4 orders of life, namely Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra. In the Narad Pancharatra, it is very clearly described how each of the social orders can please the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 18:45, it is stated, Swaswa Karmaneya Avirata Samsiddhi Labhate Nara. By executing one's prescribed duties, one can please the Supreme Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1-13 also, it is stated, Svansuta Dharmasya Samsiddhi Haritoshana. The perfection of duty is to see that by discharging one's specific duties, one satisfies the Supreme Personality of God. When the Prachetas were performing sacrifices, according to this direction, Narad Muni was satisfied to see these actions, and he also wanted to glorify Dhruv Maharaj in the sacrificial arena. So Prabhupada mentions this just to make sure that one does not consider the Narad Pancharatrika as Karmakand, because externally it may appear to be like that. It is ritualistic, it has prohibitions, it has recommendations, it has fixed procedures. So this is what Karmakand typically looks like. But Srila Prabhupada explains that how is it different? That Karam Kand is based on Varnashram. Narad Panchalatrika is based on Devi Varnashram. So while it engages the different Varnas and Ashrams according to their positions, but it engages them in the worship of the Supreme. So that's how it is. Same but different. That it does engage according to the person's Varna and Ashram, which essentially is in a way Karmakand, but does not engage them for piety, but engages them for devotional service. Now, when I was thinking, because we do not have our exposure to Narad Panchalatrika is mostly through Hari Bhakti Vilas. And from Hari Bhakti Vilas, we have the Pujari handbook that gives us deity worship. Hari Bhakti Vilas also has all these recommendations about how to follow Ekadashi, how to follow the Vivaha Samskar, how to follow festivals, etc. Mostly based on Narad Panchalatrika. We do that based on the instruction that we have gotten. We don't have like specific. Srila Prabhupada did not spend a lot of time giving us that aspect. He gave us simple instructions, but wanted us to stay true to them. And that way we are following Narad Panchalatrika. Temple deity worship is a classic example. He gave simple instructions, but he said just adhere to it. So there is some semblance of Devi Varnashram. We don't see that much cognizance of Varna or Ashram in the instructions that Prabhupada gave us. So we see a little bit of flavors that if you're a Brahman, you can do that. If you're not a Brahman, you can't do that. But other than that, not much. He does not say that if you're a Kshatriya, then this is what your morning prayers should be. This is what your evening prayers should be. If you're a Vaishya, then this is how you should worship deities. He does not make that distinction. So he further simplified it for our benefit, essentially because there really is no Varnashram right now. So he simplified it for the lowest common denominator. Moving on, verse 5. Yasta dev rishina tatra varnita bhagavat kataha mayam shusave brahman kartasyena chastam marasi. My dear Brahman, how did Narad Muni glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead and what pastimes were described in that meeting? I am very eager to hear of them. Kindly explain fully about the glorification of the Lord. So this is Vidur summarizing his ask. That tell me more about what Narad Muni spoke to glorify the personality of Godhead. So his interest has moved from the glorification of Dhruva to the glorification of the personality of Godhead. So Prabhupada says that the Bhagavatam is the record of Bhagavad Katha, topics about the pastimes of the Lord. When Vidur was anxious to hear from Maitreya, we can also hear 5,000 years later, provided we are eager. Okay, verse 6. Maitreya vacha dhruvasya chat kalaha putra pitri prasthite vanam sarvabhauma shriyam naicha adhirajasanam pitu. The great sage Maitreya replied, my dear Vidur, when Maharaj Dhruv departed from the forest, his son Utkal did not desire to accept the opulent throne of his father, which was meant for the ruler of the lands of this planets. So in 15 verses, from here to verse 20, Maitreya will describe the descendants of Dhruva Maharaj. It's a little bit of a detour because Vidur has not asked for the lineage of Dhruva Maharaj. He's more interested in what Narad Muni spoke in the arena of the Prachetas. But Maitreya understands that in order to fully appreciate the interaction, Vidur needs to appreciate the lineage of the Prachetas also. So since the Prachetas appear in the dynasty of Dhruva Maharaj, Maitreya now begins to describe the descendants of Dhruva. And this will span several chapters, pretty much the rest of the fourth canto. Because as he is describing the descendants, Maitreya will also speak about the prominent descendants. He'll speak about Vena, then he will speak about Prithu Maharaj, then he will speak about Prachina Bhari, then he will speak about the Prachetas towards the end of the canto. Verse 7. Sajanman pusantatma nihasangha samadarshanaha dadrashlo ke vitatam atmanam lokamatmani. From his very birth, Utkal was fully satisfied and unattached to the world. He was equipoised, for he could see everything resting in the super soul, and the super soul present in everyone's heart. So Utkal is the eldest son of Dhruva Maharaj, who very much like Dhruva Maharaj was a pure devotee. The only difference was that he was born a perfected soul. So from his very birth, he did not show any attraction. So Vishwanath Chakravarti describes Utkal as, based on the symptoms, he says, since he is Upashanta Atma, he is described as Upashanta Atma. So he says these are the symptoms of a Gyani. Srila Prabhupada describes him as a Mahabhagat, which is an exalted devotee. In the purport, Prabhupada says that the symptoms and characteristics of Utkal, the son of Dhruva Maharaj, are those of a Mahabhagat. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 6.30, Yo mam pashyati sarvatra sarvam cha mai pashyati. That highly advanced devotee sees the Supreme Lord everywhere and everybody resting in the Supreme. It's confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 9.4, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina. Krishna is spread all over the universe in his impersonal feature. Everything is resting on him, but that does not mean that everything is he himself. A highly advanced Mahabhagat devotee sees in the spirit. He sees the same super soul Paramatma existing within everyone's heart and regardless of discrimination based on different material forms of living entity. Prabhupada says this is possible only when one is advanced in love of Godhead. Verse 8 and 9. Atmanam Brahma Nirvanam Pratyastatmita Vigraham Avabodha Rasaikyatmyam Anandam Anushantatam Avyachino Yogagni Dagda Karma Malashayaha Swarupam Avarudhano Natmanonyam Tadekshata. By expansion of his knowledge of the Supreme Brahman, he had already attained liberation from the bondage of the body. This liberation is known as Nirvana. He was situated in transcendental bliss. And he continued always in that blissful existence, which expanded more and more. This was possible for him by continual practice of Bhakti Yoga, which is compared to fire because it burns away all dirty material things. He was always situated in his constitutional position of self-realization. And he could not see anything else but the Supreme Lord and himself engaged in discharging devotional service. So, once again, Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad, he comments on this verse, saying that what this means that Utkal knew his swaroop of being a spirit soul. So he knew his swaroop of Jiva as a Brahman, right? Atmanam Nirvanam Pratyashamita Vigraham. So he knew that he is not the body, but the spirit soul, which essentially is describing the position of a Gyani. And Srila Prabhupada, he gives many Shastric references to further describe the position of Utkal as a Mahabhagat. So it may seem there is a little bit of difference in opinion. And Acharya Matabhed is not considered to be taken as that one is right and other is wrong. It just means that they are revealing a certain aspect based on their own realization. Srila Prabhupada is revealing the devotional aspect, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Pad is revealing the Gyan or the Brahman realization aspect. Essentially, the more one makes advancement in devotional service, the more one becomes detached from both material opulence and material activity. So Prabhupada says that this is only possible when one is continuously in connection with the Supreme. So the point that Srila Prabhupada is making is that this Brahman realization is a result of bhakti. And Vishwanath Chakravarti's Pad is saying the Brahman realization is a result of Gyan. They both agree on the fact that he was on the platform of Brahman realization. How he got there, they have slight difference. So Prabhupada quotes Bhagavad Gita, Brahmabhuta Prasannatmana Sochitina Kankshati, Sama Sarveshu Bhuteshu Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param. Then he quotes again Bhagavad Gita 259, Param Trishma Nivartate, that one does not see matter as matter, but sees it as spirit. He quotes Narad Panchalatrika, Sarvapadi Vinirmukta Tattvatvena Nirmalam, to describe the position of Utkal as one who is devoid of all material existence. And then he quotes the Shikshashtakam, the first verse, Shetadakpar Marjanam Bhavma Advagni Nirvapan, that his consciousness was purified by chanting the holy name. So this purport by Srila Prabhupada is actually a very strong defense against those who are exclusively focusing on the Gyan. So if you look at the verses that Prabhupada quotes, the common thread in them is that through bhakti, one automatically gets Brahman realization. So if one were to debate a Gyani, then these are the verses that can be quoted to glorify the position of bhakti. That it actually includes, subsumes Gyan, but more than that. So in verses 7, 8, and 9, there are 8 qualities of Utkal that are glorified. That he is Upshantatma, he is peaceful, Nesanga, detached, Samadarshana, equipoised, Dadrasha Loka, with a thumb, that he sees the Supreme Lord in all the jivas. Then he is Atmanam Lokam Atmani. He sees the jivas in the Supreme Lord. Then he has attained the realization of Brahman, which was peaceful, devoid of argument, pure knowledge, bliss, and all pervading. Then he has burnt all his contaminations by the practice of yoga, and he is situated in this constitutional position, seeing only himself and the Lord. Yeah. So I'll do one more verse, and then we can pause for any discussion. Verse. Jadandha badhironmata mukakriti ratanmatihi lakshita patibalana prashantarchi rivanalaha. Utkal appeared to be the less intelligent person. Utkal appeared to the less intelligent persons on the road to be foolish, blind, dumb, deaf, and mad. Although actually he was not. He remained like fire covered with ashes without blazing flames. So Utkal, he did not interact with the worldly minded people. And because he was always absorbed in transcendence, he appeared to be retarded. Srila Prabhupada explains that devotees do that to preserve their own integrity and not to confuse the others. We see that in the case of Sukdev Goswami, that before he entered the assembly of the great sages, everybody around him was considering him to be mad. They were following him and they were making jokes at him, and he was quietly tolerating that. He was actually contributing to it. They thought that he was damn dumb and retarded. But when he came in the Vaishnav Sangha, then he spoke most eloquently on the highest principles of religion. So Utkal had the same mood, that in order to not get entangled, he distanced himself. See the case in the case of Jat Bharat also. See in the case of later on in the case of Rishabh Dev, that they appear to be in a certain way just to maintain distance. Prabhupada says that for all practical purposes, the whole world is full of non-devotees. And so one kind of very advanced devotee is called Bhajananandi. Those who were Goshtyanandi, however, preached to increase the number of devotees. So Prabhupada makes this point that the Bhajananandis, they are the ones who interact in this way. So they deliberately put up this barrier of being mad or retarded, just so that they can execute their bhakti in peace. Like Gaur Kishore Das Babaji was famous for that. Right? He would sometimes chant in front of a prostitute's house. He would sometimes chant in a latrine, just so that people would leave him alone. His mood was Bhajananandi. And then his disciple Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he was from all understanding as elevated as his Guru Maharaj, but he very much adopted the ways of the people. He would interact with the kings and the civil servants. He would dress in an opulent way, very much aware of what was going on. His mood was preaching. His mood was Goshthanandi, that he wanted to preach. Elsewhere, Prabhupada says that even though both are advanced, the Goshthanandis are more advanced because they're willing to take personal risks to preach the name of the Lord, because they're more compassionate. The Bhajanandis, they are focusing on their own relationship with Krishna. The Goshtanandis, they put their own relationship at risk to help the others, because they know that when they enter into this Vishaya Sagar, then even their bhakti is at risk. But they're willing to take that in order to help the other souls guide towards Krishna. And that's why they are the recipient of greater mercy of Krishna. Okay, so let me pause here and see who has any comments, discussion.
One confusion around Utkal, like Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, putting him in the Gyani category, and Prabhupada putting him in the Mahabhagat category. So does it mean that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is basically saying that he comes from a Jnana background, but now, I mean, he is a devotee, but he comes from a Jnana background, or because a Gyani will, I don't know if they, how can a Gyani be a Mahabhagat? I guess that's the question.
You're right. I could not. That's why I said this is matbhed amongst the acharyas. What Srila Prabhupada says is that he reached this platform through bhakti, and Vishwanath Chakravarti says that he reaches this platform through Gyan. Gyan does not necessarily have to stop at impersonalism. So Gyan can get one to the Brahman platform, and from that platform one can proceed to bhakti. Vishwanath Chakravarti doesn't make that point. He just says that he was a Gyani and at the platform of Brahman realization. Now, conversely, bhakti includes Brahman realization, which is where the commonality is. That Brahman realization is a byproduct of bhakti. Brahman realization is a result of Gyan. Gyan can lead to bhakti. Bhakti leads to Gyan. So there's a certain amount of fungibility. Gyan Marg is a premature stage of bhakti. So that's where the difference is. Prabhupada essentially places him at the platform of pure devotional service. Vishwanath Chakravarti at the stage of Brahman realization. I wasn't able to read much. Vishwanath Chakravarti is very succinct in his commentary. Prabhupada in his purport, he goes to fair amount of length to indicate that how, like all those verses that he, Sarvapadi Vinir Mukta, and the quotes from Bhagavad Gita that he gives, he uses that to show that the symptoms that one gets from Gyan, one can also get from Bhakti. So that's how Prabhupada makes this case, that even though it looks like he's on Gyan platform, but these symptoms are also displayed through the process of Bhakti. So one can understand that he's a Mahabhagat. Vishwanath Chakravarti does not. He just simply states in a few lines that he had perfected the Gyan and was situated in Brahma realization.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Just to confirm about the Hari Bhakti Vilas. Okay, it comes from Panchalatrika Vidhi, but Hari Bhakti Vilas was written by Gopal Bhatta Goswami.
Written by, so The authorship of it is a little bit disputed. The understanding is written jointly by Sanatan Goswami and Gopal Bhatt Goswami, but attributed mostly to Sanatan Goswami.
Because I remember that from the person of Gopal Bhatt Goswami, he came from a South Indian family from where he got the system of deity worship, and then he was brought into the Gaudiya Vaishnavism.
His father was the chief priest of Srirangam, which follows very strict Panchalatrika Vidhi. So he learned that with his father, and then he expanded it. Hari Bhakti Vilas also has excerpts from Padma Puran, but so does Narad Panchalatrika. Narad Panchalatrika is not something that stands on its own, that Narad Muni simply wrote it. He essentially collected different aspects from different Vedas and Purans, and he compiled it there. So Padma Puran has contributions to the Hari Bhakti Vilas. And the red book that we have for deity worship is an abridgment of the Hari Bhakti Vilas.
Thank you.
No more questions? We'll proceed.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, one simple clarification question. In text 4, we discussed Prabhupada has given some simple instructions in the combination of both Narad Panchalatrika and Bhagavad, right? So he made as simplified as possible. So the only clarification I have is, where does these fall, like how we do this Bhishma Panchak right now, or are these any fall under any of these activities? And was this approved by Srila Prabhupada, or we follow just as it was provided in the scriptures?
It's a good question. As far as I know, Srila Prabhupada never followed Bhishma Panchak. And he may have spoken about it, but he did not recommend. Well, I won't say did not recommend, he did not instruct. Like he instructed Ekadashi, he instructed Janmashtami, that specifically he said, Acharyas, fast half day. So those he gave. I don't believe there is any instruction on the Bhishma Panchak. Bhishma Panchak kind of evolved a little later on, mostly in Mayapur. Now, it's not that it is unauthorized. And so Bhishma Panchak is glorified in different scriptures. It emerged later on in Mayapur, and then devotees started following it. How to follow Bhishma Panchak is also differently described. Under some, Bhishma Panchak means you don't fast. You drink the water of the lentils. So each of the 5 days, you take something. You drink the water of the lentils, or you take something else. And 5th day, then you break the fast by taking everything that is normal. I think some devotees, they simplified the whole process and they started fasting for Bhishma Panchak. So they simply fast. Some devotees, they follow Ekadashi for the Bhishma Panchak. They follow 5 days of Ekadashi. So based on the description, it again looks like it's something that's a combination of Bhagavad and Panchalatrika Vidhi. But within ISKCON, especially within the realm of the teachings of Prabhupada, it's not given a lot of importance. Chaturmash is not given a lot of importance. Chaturmash, every 4 months you abstain from something.
Yeah.
Right. I think 4th month you abstain from Utkal, if I remember rightly. Not given a lot of importance. Prabhupada's recommendation for Kartik, at least, not so much the Chaturmash, but Kartik is chant extra rounds and do some devotional service, like serve devotees or do parikrama. So just something to increase like he would say that benefits increase thousands of times over. So he would recommend to do some Bhagavad Vidhi, some form of worship of the Lord or the devotees. That's why in Vrindavan, if you go now, it's very, very crowded. You won't get. I was there many years ago for doing Govardhan Parikrama during Kartik, and it's rush hour there. You can't walk at a normal pace. There are so many people there that you have to basically walk like you're in a crowded train station. So many people doing Parikrama at the time. Radha Kund, Sham Kund, impossible to get in over there. You go for Mangal Aarti at the temples, the popular temples, they're overflowing to the street. They're overflowing. But this is not just ISKCON, this is Vajvasis. Vrindavan. So they have a lot of this enthusiasm of increasing their devotion. A lot of charity is given during this time. I remember one person wanted to do Brahman Bhog during Kartik. He wasn't able to get any Brahmins because they had so many Bhogs already scheduled. He wasn't able to get Brahmins. So people are very actively giving in charity, feeding the sadhus. They give blankets and they compete with one another. One person says, I'll give you bhog. The other person will say, I'll give you bhog and a blanket. Third person will say, I will give you bhog and a blanket and dakshina. So people pick the best offer and go there. So it's an exciting time to be in Vrindavan. Bhakti is in the air. Everybody is looking to increase their devotion. It's also a slightly passionate time there. I went there a few times. After that, I avoid Kartik just because very, very hectic. Can't get a room to stay in. Everything is very, very busy at the time. So many yatras going on. So the yatras are, they attract thousands of people. So it becomes very, very busy. I mean, I think my consciousness is not that clear because they're all devotees. You should enjoy the Sangha. I get a little frazzled by all the crowd and all that. But it's worth an experience. It is going a few times to see how the bhakti is being churned and how it's manifesting. Sorry, a bit of a detour. I hope I answered.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry I thought it will be a detour. Just I wanted to even see what is the reference for this issue. Reference in the sense, I want to learn more, kind of. I don't want to spend time here, but I'll take it.
Okay.
Just a comment. What I see that Srila Prabhupada is not for the austerity of the body. if this would impact devotional service. I've read in some places that he said that even if you don't fast, it's okay, but the execution of devotional should continue. And I've seen this at several places. I don't know if you've come across this type of thing too.
I would agree with that. Prabhupada was very practical that way, that the main thing was bhakti. Everything was a supporting anga. If you give too much austerities to the body and your bhakti is getting diminished, then they're useless austerities, right? What's the point in doing that austerity? If you're not able to chant, not able to serve devotees, serve the deity, what's the point in those austerities? Prabhupada's definition of austerity is to reduce engagement so that you can increase your devotion. Both of them have to go together. It's not that he said no austerities and everybody has chappan bhog every day and everybody is getting up at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. and sleeping, late, don't do any austerities. No, he wanted us to do some austerity, right? Get up in the early morning, chant, very strong about going to Mangalarti, very strong about serving other devotees. So yeah, but his definition was that they should lead to the increase of one's devotion. Otherwise, they'll simply harden the heart. Those austerities we do not recommend.
Also, Prabhupada at the time, he was actually wanted to be more focused. He didn't want to introduce too many things to the foreign disciples, like Western disciples. And his main goal was Sankirtan, book distribution and Sankirtan. If we are trying to follow Chaturmasya, not eating this, not eating that, all those things, and people are going out and distributing books everywhere, we will not be able to follow those restrictions. It's very difficult. So that is my understanding, is that he was very focused in the mission of spreading the movement. And in that mission, he really did not insist upon Bhishma Panchak or Chaturmasya or any of the details. But certainly, as you said, the basics were very much foundational for our bhakti, that he always insisted, the chanting and the Mangalarati and all those other things. One time, I think somebody told me that, I don't know whether you told me or somebody told me, Prabhupada, we are not eating palak or something like that for Chaturmasya. Prabhupada said, "Oh, we are following Chaturmasya now?" He was asking the disciple like that. So, I was thinking, like, how Prabhupada was so focused in spreading the movement, not really giving so much emphasis on the procedures. Rituals are there, but it is not to the extent which supports our mission.
Yeah. I think you described it very well, Prabhu, that he gave us a foundation, and the basis of that foundation was chanting. So there he was not willing to make any compromises. And sometimes disciples would come and say that, I'm getting only 2 hours of sleep and I'm not able to chant. And Prabhupada would say that, then you reduce your sleep and chant. And so he was not willing to compromise on chanting. That was the core basis that he said. You have taken a vow, you should chant the prescribed number of rounds. Everything else is adjustable, but not the chanting. Then after the chanting, the regulative principles. And he was insisting that, but regulative principles he was willing to compromise once in a while. Like the famous example of Prabhupada saying to his disciples in Poland that if you don't get vegetarian food, you eat meat, but preaching must go on. Or when Prabhupada was in the house of a life member and he served onion garlic, Prabhupada ate himself and he asked the disciple, one of the disciples said, "This is onion garlic." Prabhupada said, "No onion garlic." He said, No, there is onion garlic. And he said, "Be quiet." Prabhupada said, "Be quiet and eat it." So because he didn't want to offend the life member, he was a very rich person and getting favorable to Krishna consciousness. So under exceptional circumstances, he would compromise, but the next would be the four regulative principles. And then after that was his layer of things that he highly recommended, like Ekadashi, Janmashtami, fasting for the acharyas. Other things, he was like, not very following Chaturmash or Bhishma Panchak or elaborate deity worship. Right? There's so many letters by Prabhupada where he criticizes elaborate deity worship. He says, you can never do elaborate deity worship. So why do you even try? So do keep it simple, but focus on consistency, punctuality, and cleanliness. Right? Not so much doing these mudras, these niyas, and all these kinds of, very, very elaborate procedures. It wasn't much in favor. But yes, basic deity worship. He would, in fact, he recommended deity worship to be basic. Even the temple deity worship, if you look at it, is within ISKCON, the temple deity worship is outward facing. So the deities are dressed gorgeously so that the congregation is attached to the deities. The temple is kept clean. Prasadam is being offered on a regular basis so that people get benefit of prasadam. Now, again, it's not arbitrary. The following of the timings of the arti and the offerings is according to the Ashtakali Leela, which has tinges of Bhagavad Vidhi, but it's just reflections, right? It's not. It's basically Bhagavad Vidhi that has been merged with Panchalatrika Vidhi for the sake of preaching. That because the devotees serving the deities are mostly neophytes, so they need the structure to follow. And the main reason is that when the deities are happy, then preaching goes, book distribution goes. That's the purpose. So whatever Prabhupada did, he did it with a lot of foresight to help the devotees and the essential principle of preaching. So with a lot of thoughtfulness, Srila Prabhupada gave us what we have.
Prabhuji, one question, Prabhuji. As Prem Kishore Prabhu mentioned about Vaishnu Panchak, what is why it is called Vaishnu Panchak, and why these 5 days are considered so unique even in Kartik, Prabhuji?
So it is related to Bhishma Dev. It was first described by Bhishma Dev. Not first described, but it was described by Bhishma Dev as special days in Kartik. I forget the references that he gives. I have it somewhere in my notes, but I forget he gives certain references why these 5 days are special. What is the benefits? There are thousands of benefits. I mean, if you read that part of where Vishnu Panchak is glorified, then there are thousands and thousands of benefits given for Vishnu Panchak. One who follows the Vishnu Panchak sees the demigods in this very life. One who follows the Vishnu Panchak is never has to face the Yamadutas. So a lot of benefits are given. Either it's not given explicitly or I don't remember that why does Bhishma Dev pick these 5 days specifically for this special mercy. I can look up my notes, and if I find something, I'll let you know.
Sure, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. I think it is because Vishnudev explained, but not because something happened in Vishnudev's life, not like a historical thing. It is basically
Nothing that happened in his life. As far as I remember, it was explained by Bhishma Dev. And it appears in Mahabhagat, explained by Bhishma Dev. That's what my recollection is.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, moving on. Thank you for the nice discussion. Verse 11. Matvatam jadamut matvatam jadamut unmatam kulavrida samantrinaha vatsarambu patim chakru yaviyamasan brahme sutam. For this reason, the ministers and all the elderly members of the family thought Utkal to be without intelligence, and in fact, mad. Thus, his younger brother named Vatsar, the son of Brahmi, was elevated to the royal throne, and he became the king of the world. So, when Dhruva became the king, in addition to the desire of his father, it was also based on the desires of the ministers and the citizens. So in the elevation of Vatsar, it's not clear whether Dhruv Maharaj played a role, but it is clear that the other two parties played a role. That the ministers and the citizens, because they thought that Utkal was mad, he was the eldest son, so he had the right to ascend to the throne, but because they thought he was mad, he was disqualified. So the next to Utkal was Vatsar, so they made Vatsar the king. So the Prabhupada says that that even though there was monarchy, it was not autocracy. So important difference. So monarchy means, mono means one. Monarchy means ruled by one person. And autocracy means, auto means independent. So even though there was rule of one person, that person was not independent. So he was guided by the ministers, the brahmanas, the citizens. So that is why Prabhupada would say that benevolent monarchy, which is monarchs that are properly situated, Rajarishis, is actually the best form of governance. Verse 12. Swarviti vatsarasyesta bharya sutta shad atmajam pushparanam tigamekatam cha isham murjam vasum jayam. King Vatsar had a very dear wife whose name was Swarviti, and she gave birth to 6 sons named Pushpan, Tigmaketu, Isha, Urja, Basu, and Jaya. The Prabhupada said, if both the husband and the wife are endowed with good qualities, nice children take birth, and the whole family is endowed with happiness. Most of the next verses don't have a purport. They're simply reciting the recitation of the lineage. Verse 13. Pushpanasya prabhabharya doshachadve bhabuvatahu pratar madhyam dinam shayam iti hayasan prabhasutah. Pushpan had 2 wives named Prabha and Dosha. Prabha had 3 sons named Pratar, Madhyandinam, and Shayam. Pradosho nishchita vyustha iti dosha shutastrayah vyustha sutam pushkarnyam Sarve tejasam madade. Dosha had three sons, Pradosha, Nishita, and Vyustha. Vyustha's wife Pushkarni, Vyustha's wife was named Pushkarni, and she gave birth to a very powerful son named Sarvatej. Verse 15 and 16. Sachakshusutam akuyutam patnayam manum avapaha manorasutamahishi virjanadvalasutam purum kutasvan tritam dyumnam satyavantam vritam Agnisto mamam atiratram pradyuman shibhimul mukam. Sarvateja's wife Akuti gave birth to a son named Chakshusha, who became the sixth Manu at the end of the Manu millennium. Nadval, the wife of Chakshushu Manu, gave birth to the following faultless sons: Puru, Kutsa, Trita, Dumna, Satyavan, Vrita, Agnistoma, Atiratra, Pradyumna, Shibhi, and Pulmukha. So we see now that the lineage has spanned from the first Manvantara to the sixth Manvantara. Dhruva appeared in the Manvantara of Swayambhavu Manu, and his descendants have been described. Now we are at the birth of Chakshusha Manu, who is the sixth Manu in the sixth Manvantara. Ulmuka janayat putran pushkaryanyam saduttaman angam sumana samkhyatim kratum angirasam gayam. Of the 12 sons, Ulmuk begot 6 sons and his wife Pushkari. They were all very good sons, and their name was Anga, Sumana, Khyati, Krato, Angira, and Gaya. So some of these names are also names of personalities that are exalted. It's like now also people have names based on rishis or demigods. So the Angira over here is not Angira Rishi. It's just a person who had the name Angira. Similarly, Khyati over here is not the wife of Bhrigu, just a person by the name of Khyati. Verse 18. Sunitangasya patni Shushuve namulbanam Yaddohishilyat saraj rishi Nirvino niragat purat. The wife of Anga, Sunita, gave birth to a son named Vena, who was very crooked. The saintly king Anga was very disappointed with Vena's bad character, and he left home and kingdom and went out to the forests. So I also have a table that gives the descendants of Dhruva, and I will send that to Prem Kishore Prabhu. I think I'm forgetting, Prabhu, if you can remind me. I need to send you the tables. I was going to send it to you last time, but then Ravi Prabhu wanted the journey of threes to be included. So then I started. So I had it in my notes, but I started cleaning it up to become more presentable. I think it'll take me maybe a few more days to make it nice and presentable. And I'll send it to you. Essentially, the table describes from Dhruva Maharaj to Anga, the descendants. Verse 19 and 20. Yamangashe Pukupita Vagbhadra Munayah Kila Gatasostasya Bhuyaste Mamantur Dakshinam Karam Arajake Tadaloke Dasyubi Pidita Prajaha Jato Narayanam Shena Prithuradhyakshitishvaraha. My dear Vidur, when the great sages curse, their words are as invincible as a thunderbolt. Thus, when they cursed King Vena out of anger, he died. After his death, since there was no king, all the rogues and thieves flourished. The kingdom became unregulated, and all the citizens suffered greatly. On seeing this, the great sages took the right hand of Vena as a churning rod. And as a result of their churning, Lord Vishnu, in his partial representation, made his advent as King Prithu, the original emperor of the world. So Maitreya is describing this. So essentially, this is the summation of the pastime of the appearance of, that leads to the appearance of King Prithu. That Anga left. Vena was a bad king, and the sages got angry. They cursed him. He died. Then they churned, and Prithu appeared. So his plan is that he will summarize this and move on. But Vidur now gets very interested in finding out more about this pastime. So he will ask for further details about what happens, and that will then prompt Maitreya to describe this in further details. Okay. So the next 4 verses are Vidur's inquiries, and maybe I'll do 2 verses and then we'll pause so that there is some time for discussion. If there is. Vidur vacha tasya shila nidhe sadho brahmanayasya mahatmana rajana katham abhudushta prajayad vimanayayu. Vidur inquired from the sage Maitreya, my dear Brahman, King Anga was very gentle. He had high character and was a saintly personality and lover of Brahmanical culture. How is it that such a great soul got a bad son like Vena, because of whom he became indifferent to his kingdom and left it? So verses 1, 2, 3, and 4 are questions by Vidur about Vena. Prabhupada in the purport, he quotes Chanakya Pandit, and he says that as per Chanakya Pandit, a father who has too much debt is an enemy. A mother who marries for a second time is an enemy. A wife who is very beautiful is an enemy. And a son who is a foolish rascal is an enemy. So in this way, when a family member becomes an enemy, it is very difficult to live in the family life or remain a householder. Generally, such situations occur in the material world. Therefore, according to Vedic culture, one has to take leave of his family members just after his 50th birthday, 50th year, so that the balance of his life may be completely devoted in search of Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada personally also demonstrated that his family situation was not very good. He did not have a wife who supported him in devotion. His sons were also not very supportive. So till the time that they needed his support, Prabhupada stayed there. But when the sons were older and they were qualified to support the mother, then Srila Prabhupada left. I forget the age at which he took sannyas. I'm thinking it was
53. No? I think
53.
I think so.
Okay. Yeah. So that is Prabhupada's recommendation. He's saying that because most of the houses, something is going on, right? Either the father is the enemy, or the mother is the enemy, or the wife is the enemy, or the son is the enemy, or all of them are a little bit enemies. So he says the best is to leave the house after 50 and devote one's life to Krishna consciousness. Okay, so I'll pause here, and anybody has comments to share?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Firstly, I wanted to extend my thankfulness, Prabhuji. The classes are beautiful. On top of it, like you're taking special effort to refine, because you know everything, but still, you know, you're studying it and you're refining the documents for our sake and sending for us. So this actually increasing our responsibility to take it more seriously. So I wanted to thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Well, I definitely don't know everything, which is why I prepare notes. But my notes are generally very what's the right word? They're unreadable by anybody but me, because I just kind of I put a lot of things in there. Some of them I don't know. So it helps me also. I think when I refine the notes, I share them. It helps me to refer later on. But thank you for your kind words, Prabhu.
Prabhu, you write in code.
Actually, you're true. I write in acronyms and half sentences, but sometimes even if I go to my very old notes, even I take some time to figure out what was I writing.
Yeah, even me, when I write something after 6 months, I don't understand what I wrote.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so we will meet Wednesday, which is the second to last day of Kartik, ending of Kartik. Kartik ends on Thursday, so we'll meet on Wednesday.
How's your Bhishma Panchak going? Are you still high on water?
Yes, I am.
It looks like you're going to faint.
No, I'm okay. Work from home is helping, so I don't have to commute. And first 2 days tend to be a little difficult, and after that it's not that difficult. The body gets used to it. So Sunday, Monday, today is a little difficult, but I anticipate from tomorrow onwards it'll be better. So I also chant for the 5 days. I chant 64 rounds, so that helps me because I don't get much time to think about, like, when's my next meal coming, etc. So Bish Panchak is broken at moonrise of the last day of Kartik. So Thursday moonrise, the Bish Panchak is broken. So I know from past, then my chanting is mostly focusing on what I'm going to eat once the, Kartik ends.
You're having salt or sugar, Prabhuji, along with water?
I'm taking not sugar, but I take salt.
Salt.
Take salt. Yeah.
Prabhu, even on Thursday, it would be very difficult to swallow.
it's amazing how quickly the body gets used to it. But you're right. The first few morsels, the body it gets a little surprised what's going on. But it's amazing how quickly the body adapts to it. I think the most difficult thing for me, and Ravi Prabhu can be a testimony to it, that we had all these programs for Kartik, and devotees, they preferred such opulent prasadam. One devotee had 108 offerings, and other devotees, they had like this really, really out of the world prasadam. And then I think that was more austere than Bhishma Panchak.
It's a good test.
It is, yeah. Especially because everybody, a lot of what I said is what has been told to me also. The devotees are not happy when you come to their house and you don't honor prasadam. So then different devotees would tell me, Prabhupada never asked you to do, never asked this to do. Prabhupada never recommended fasting so much, etc. So that's why I had so much of material ready to share today, because I received a lot of it over the month.
Prabhuji, actually these 5 days I am targeting to have non-grains, Prabhuji, salad and all those. Only today I ate salad. I already feeling that in throat there is something. I was thinking about you, how you are able to do whole month eating salad. And
so what are you doing, Achyuta? You were planning to do something for Bhishma Panchak, right?
Yeah, Prabhu, just Ekadashi for the 5 days.
Oh, that's very nice. That's nice.
Yeah, and more chanting. That's all.
Okay, so we'll end here. Thank you so much. Vanchakalpatarubhayashet kripasindhubhyaevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Anant Koti Vaishnavrind ki jai. Shila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanand. Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.
Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you.